All right, everyone, welcome. Thank you for being here. I have been, for this past week, processing a lot of things. And a lot of it had to do, and as I'm going through the myriad of items that are showing up for me, giving the transition and the shift and everything else that's happening, and how rapid things are moving, and how much of a seesaw, or not so seesaw, it's not the right analogy, rather, it feels like an emotional roller coaster. There are days where it's like this joy and this peak. There are other days where doubt begins to creep in and you begin to doubt yourself and you fall down this crevice and you're wondering to yourself, is this going to get better? Why am I feeling this way? And then it goes back up again. And so as this goes on, there's always this second guessing in my head of doubts that are coming in, that I'm doubting that the choices that I made are the right choice. And I'm realizing what kind of nailed it in the coffin for me is that I just saw a report about a reporter that was analyzing conspiracy theory, more specifically QAnon related, that some of the conspiracy theory are so outlandish right now that even Q is the so-called unknown Q that formed QAnon is now saying that a lot of these things are not true because they basically bypassed them and they've taken a life of their own. And I'm aware of this, and basically the bulk of humanity, the bulk of this country, is beginning to be believing in all kind of bizarre and weird stuff and becoming more and more radicalized. Now, I don't want to get involved into the good or the bad of that phenomena, but what I want to focus on is the part that relates to me, to all of us who are trying to spread light and true transformation into the world. I want to talk a little bit about the emotional intelligence, which is basically what these people are lacking so that they can figure out what's true and what's not true. They lack emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and spiritual intelligence. I know I've spoken about these things in spurts here and there, but I want to focus clearly today on these three things. And how do we evolve it? And what kind of dynamic takes place when you begin to focus on these various items? What does it do for you? What are the benefits? And basically, how do you go about doing this? In all the teaching that I'm doing now, and this was not true at the beginning when I started teaching initially by topic: chakras, earth chakras, human chakras, rays of God, archetypes, and various spiritual topic. Right now, anybody that comes and wants to be trained in the Ascension Yoga that I teach, I give them a training on emotional intelligence. Because without this, moving through the transition into the new earth, you're lost. You will not find your way. This is how important or critical this is at this point. And I cannot, it's a 9-unit thing, but so when someone joins, I give them this as a complimentary thing for them to, it's 9 2-hour training, and I give them to them as complimentary so that they can follow on their own. Because I did this years ago and I don't want to go back, because if I have to go back for every new student that comes in, I will never move forward. So what I want to do now is that I want to talk a little bit about the details and of what kind of work is involved in the emotional intelligence. For one thing, we have to walk away from this understanding that there is such a thing as a good feeling and a bad feeling. all feelings are just that, they're just feeling. And we have to remove all the adjectives. Because the moment you say this is a bad feeling, what we do is that if an uncomfortable feeling shows up, instead of looking at it critically and analyzing it to try to figure out what it's trying to tell us, we would suppress it or try to change it or medicate it, cover it up, put a happy face on it, do whatever we can, all kind of camouflage mechanism, not to deal with the bad feeling. Because a lot of time, for me anyway, the greatest insight that I have had was always going into the discomfort. And as I went into discomfort, all of a sudden, and circled around in 4 days, all of a sudden there was something of incredible benefit that it yielded for me, a blind spot, something I was not seeing, that what may have been obvious to anybody else that would look at me from the outside would see the big red clown nose on my face, but I didn't see it. So when I'm able to discover it, it benefited me tremendously. And the next step that follows after discovering, let's say, a false belief in your spiritual psychology that has caused you to repeat a pattern over and over again, and having the same things being repeated over and over again, and not being able to move out of the stuck space. When you discover this pattern, then you apply corrective measures so that the core belief that holds it in place, you change it with something that is ascended, that is of a higher octave, that will, or if you cannot change it because it's a complex, because we can reprogram, we can change, alter, and transform things that are programmed in our subconscious mind. But something that's a complex, meaning by that it's been pervasive and going on for a long time, that it has accumulated enough psychic energy to be autonomous, to be like a splinter psyche, where it has a life of its own, it has its own response mechanism, it has its own voice, it has its own way of dealing with things, and so on and so forth. Those kind of things you cannot reprogram. You will say affirmation until the end of time, you will not be able to reprogram it. What you do with something like this, you give it a different assignment. You elevate it into something else. So that's the part that needs to be understood, because I see a lot of people in like community who are constantly trying to reprogram things, and by saying new affirmation, what you do when you create an affirmation against a series of new belief system, against a complex or a false personality module in your subconscious mind, you have now two things that are going to battle each other. And you're creating basically major inner conflicts between these two belief systems. Whereas if you understand and you know that this is a spiritual psyche, what you do is that you surrender the whole thing into God. You elevate it, you give it to God, and you ask God to heal it. Because by your own device, you cannot do it alone. And you ask your higher power, however you perceive it, to help you. Let us begin by defining what's emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the management of emotion. In other words, you have to learn how to process your emotions. Let's start out by describing what happened in our brain chemistry when we have a feeling or an emotion. When an event occurs, let's say in this instance, to make it very simple, it's a fight or flight response. You're walking down the street in a sidewalk, a bus starts running, and it's moving into the sidewalk, moving toward you. Fight or flight response. Your body sees a danger on the outside, and there is a part of our brain which is called the hypothalamus. And it has in it all kinds of powerful hormones that are called peptides. And it releases a very specific, every emotion is connected to a release of a separate peptide. The peptides are like keys. And in nanosecond, they're very powerful psychotropic drug that your own body produces. In nanoseconds, it's spread to your whole body. The peptides are released like a spray, and every cell in your physical body will have now the peptide, like a key, that will penetrate into one peptide per cell to change the cellular structure and cause it to vibrate into an understanding of danger. And the body automatically responds, and what it responds into, it drains the brain from out of blood, and it puts the blood in your limb, in your arms, in your leg, so that you can have superhuman power. You can flee and run away from the bus. You can have the speed that's necessary. You can do whatever is necessary to survive. Now, you can only remain in fight or flight for a short period of time, because once the danger is past, you are completely drained. In some instances, particularly in the animal kingdom, if you ever witness National Geographic, when an animal is in danger, the moment the danger begins to happen, they defecate immediately. Like their body purge immediately to make them lighter so that they can fly, they can flee. In some instances where human beings are in danger, the same thing happens as well. I remember somebody talking about the First World War and death it was a very cruel war, because it's the old system with people were still using guns with spikes and all that. And somebody was saying, one of the people that was there, that it wasn't just the smell of the dead body, but there was feces and defecation everywhere. Because when people are in danger, that's what they do, they release. So that's one peptide. I want you to understand what's happening. Let's go back over the cellular structure. The peptide goes into the cell, each cell, and it changes the frequency of the cell. It changes the vibration, and it causes your whole body holographically, in your own torsion field and morphogenic field, to have a perception, a very specific perception, and you're inside that bubble and you react to it in whatever way that you need to react to so that you can survive. Now, the same is true where the peptide or the emotion or the experience were to be, for example, joy. It is a specific peptide that comes from the hypothalamus that get cast, that goes in nanosecond and spread through the whole body and enter every cellular structure as a key goes into a cylinder. It turns the cellular structure. It happened in a blank, okay? In a blank. And all of a sudden, you're in a different state of consciousness. That emotion is all over you. It could be victimization. It could be empowerment. It could be a sense of enlightenment, surrender, whatever the emotion may be. The hypothalamus is the chemical drug factory that's in your brain, and it produces all of them. It's a biochemical reaction, or emotions are nothing more than a biochemical reaction to peptides that are being released. That's the biology. Now, beyond the biology, once you have the experience, let's say the experience, you are not in the savannah, you don't have a lion around there running after you, but you're still somehow releasing in your peptide the same fight or flight hormone as if you were in danger, as if you were a wildebeest in the savannah and you had a pride of lion that was running after you. That's a problem. And that problem has to do with, and the way we have emotional intelligence is that you have to manage the emotion by understanding why you're reacting this way, what's the root cause, and more to the point, are you overreacting? Is the situation that's triggering this on the outside big enough to cause you to go into a space where you're experiencing this? So the way you do this is that whatever the emotion is, whether it's fear, whether it's anger, you literally drop into the feeling. You don't reject it because it's a bad feeling. You know that old thing that people say all the time, I have a bad feeling about this. Whatever the feeling is, you go into it. You sink into it. I am feeling something. It's uncomfortable. Let my awareness drop into it. Where am I? First of all, where am I feeling it? Is it in my stomach? Is it in my back? Is it in my heart? Is it all over me? Am I feeling it in my head? Or is it outside of me? Where am I feeling this? And wherever it is, let your awareness drop into it. And then at that moment, once you're no longer adversarial to the feeling, you're now going to start engaging it in an intellectual conversation. Cognitive function, frontal lobe will now have a conversation. What you're doing is that you're going to create what the people at the HeartMath Institute you're going to create coherence, because you're now sinking into the emotion, and now you're going to engage your frontal lobe to have a conversation. So the mind and the heart are going to be connected. You're going to have a conversation. So as you drop into the sensation or the perception, whatever it may be, the feeling may be, you begin to ask, what am I feeling? The first thing you ask is, where am I feeling it? And then you go into that place. The second thing, what am I feeling? Now, sometime when we ask this question and we wait for an answer, because we can lie to ourselves all the time. The reason we do the emotional intelligence exercise like this, it's because we are masters of self-deceit. We lie to ourselves all the time. And if you intellectually are mapping it out, like you're trying to manage it by creating an Excel chart, and you will never get it. You have to energetically drop into the part of your body, let your awareness drop into it where it is. This is the only way. And then now you're engaging your energy body. You're having an intellectual conversation, inner conversation between your cognitive awareness and the actual feeling. So what am I feeling? A lot of times, the feeling, what comes back is a sensation, but that sensation is so big and so overwhelming that we cannot figure out exactly what it is. It feels too big, it feels immense. But there is definitely something there. You're feeling an energy, you're feeling a sensation, you're feeling an uncomfortable sensation. Something is there, but I don't know exactly what it is. A lot of time it's because that sensation and that feeling is not just one feeling. It's a combination of multiple feelings simultaneously. Because one can be feeling victimized by something, and yet at the same time be enraged and furious. And when you have both feelings, or if you're not enraged and furious, you're feeling victimized and you're feeling guilty for feeling victimized at the same time. So when you have, or let's say all three of them can exist in one sensation. And if you're feeling, if it's a combination of feelings, you're not, and you're asking, what am I feeling? Thinking it's one feeling, you're not going to see it. You're going to feel something big and something overwhelming, and it's not going to help you. So the next thing to do is to, if you're not getting a response from your energy body, is to ask, is this one feeling, or is it a combination of multiple feelings? And if it is a combination of multiple feelings, what is the first feeling? And wait for an answer. What is the second feeling? Are there any other feelings? And that way, if you break it down into its part, you can manage it better. Okay? Let's say, for the sake of simplicity, that it was just one feeling. When you say, what am I feeling? You get, you're feeling, let's say, victimization, victimized. The next question would be, what's the root cause of me feeling this way? And you would find an answer for you to show up. Often it may show up as something from your past, or something that recently occurred that triggered you to feel this way, because somebody yelled at me and somebody did this to me, blah, 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 etc. It could be an incident that happened moments earlier, and that flashes back into your consciousness as the reason, the cause of this. But is it really the root cause? Often it's not, because the universe mirrors things that are patterns that are unresolved in us. So if it shows up, if it keeps showing up and the same pattern keeps showing up, it's because some earlier event in your life, either in this life or past life, has created a pattern. And that pattern is in disharmony. And the fact that the universe keeps bringing it up as an emotional thing is for you to find a way to resolve it. It's the universe saying, Pierre, solve this. Pierre, this is not resolved. Pierre, this is not resolved, over and over again, for me to go and address it. So when a perception or a sensation shows up like this, sometime after asking that question, I would ask, depending on how I feel and what kind of response I get, because it's very dynamic. I'm having a conversation with my energy body, and my energy body could respond in any way possible. I'm just giving you a kind of general template. You're gonna have to adjust it according to how your energy body responds. And the other question that I would ask often, is this the first time that I have felt this way? And that part often triggers major breakthrough for me. Because if it's a pattern and I keep repeating it, and I've done this, I've been there multiple times, that's something that I need to address for the health of my spiritual psychology. That's something that I need to attend to resolve so that I can move forward. So I want you and don't make it long. 10 minutes, 15 minutes max. I don't want you to stand there for 3 hours. First of all, who has 3 hours to do this? And even if you did this way, the emotions are going to overwhelm you. Do not make the mistake that I see a lot of light workers do, which is when they're feeling an emotion, they bypass it, particularly negative emotion. They try to change it. It's happening. It's not really happening. If I'm feeling fear and I'm not acknowledging the fear, and I'm not processing the fear, let me change it to joy. Let me change it to jubilance and attempt. And even most of the time, you're not able to do it. I can tell you that you will spend 3 or 4 days, if not a week, trying to do it, and you will not be able to do it. Because if you're feeling panic or fear, particularly with what's happening on the planet right now, with all of the climate change events and all of the political and social unrest and all the insecurities that everyone is feeling about the future, if this is happening for you right now and you try to do this, you're not going to be able to move it out of the way. With just reframing the thinking, with denial, with bypass. Emotional bypass will not get you to the new earth. What I am sharing with you as a for emotional intelligence is concerned is a updated version of the dantian. So instead of focusing on the dantian specifically, which is between your pelvic bones, you're focusing to wherever the emotion is in your energy body, wherever it shows up for you. And as that happens, you have this dialogue. You focus on it, you surrender, and you have the dialogue, and you have the inner conversation, and information will show up for you. Now, after 10 minutes, stop. Go do something else. The next day, if the feeling is still there, because a lot of time, particularly with events that are happening around the world, I can only talk about me, it lasts for several days. These feelings last for several days. And so the next day when it shows up again, I go around I repeat the same dialogue again. And I dynamically respond. And again, this is a broad outline. You have to adjust it to the way your energy body responds to you organically. So as this is happening, I very quickly will begin to know how I'm supposed to respond to this. Now, the dynamic is I often refer to it as the wall of Jericho. Jericho was the biblical city that had an impenetrable wall that Joshua needed to breach, and it was impossible for him to do with frontal assault. And then God said to Joshua, circle the city for 7 days. And as you circle the city, play the drums and the trumpet and praise God as you circle the city. Keep circling, keep circling. And on the 7th day, as you circle, the wall of Jericho collapsed. What you're doing right now with this emotional intelligence conversation and management, you are circling Jericho. These emotions, a lot of time, would not yield immediately an answer, particularly when you have a combination of 2 or 3 different emotions together. When you feel like something big is there and very uncomfortable, but I don't know what it is. It takes several walk around the wall of Jericho before it begins to disintegrate and you begin to isolate the pieces and you're able to figure out. Because once you figure out, this is an emotion I've had before, and this emotion was created around XYZ, and why am I feeling that this is the proper way to react? That's the next question. Why is it that I'm feeling victimized and that victimization feels like an appropriate response for this? Why am I feeling fear? And the fear feels like it's an appropriate response for this. What's the weakness in my spiritual psychology that's making me believe that this is the appropriate response? And wait for your energy body to give you an answer. And whatever that false belief is will show up. It will appear to you. Once the wall is collapsed, it will appear to you. Now, the reason initially your subconscious mind created the wall and is only letting you know that there is something there with the feelings and the emotion and the mirror that it's creating externally. It's because the human psyche is the most fragile system that exists in the world. It's very easy for us to be traumatized, to be fractured, and to be hurt. But it is also the most self-healing. And the only way we can prove to our inner healer and inner psyche that we are ready for the healing and we are ready for being emotionally intelligent enough to move forward and to face the false belief, the survival mechanism that we had created in some time in the past, is for us to circle Jericho, to keep going around it. And as you keep going around it multiple times, suddenly the truth will begin to shine. You will see this is the false belief. I was talking to a couple of students the past few days and for a private session, and I remember them talking about fears that they're feeling, given the insecurities and everything else that are going on right now. And the fears in this instance that the student was feeling put her into a place of feeling vulnerable. I've said this before. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It's the exact opposite. It's a superpower. Every time you're feeling vulnerable, that vulnerability is an opportunity for you to find transcendence. Listen carefully to what I'm saying to you, because it's very nuanced, but it is also potent with cosmic truth. Every time you're feeling vulnerable because of insecurities of what's happening around the world, vulnerable because you don't know, am I going to be okay because I'm afraid of all the viruses or whatever is going on there, am I going to be okay? Vulnerability because of all kinds of things that are going on. In this instance, the student of mine was feeling vulnerable because she was actually shifting awareness and is ascending into a higher state of awareness. And that expansion is scaring her. So there was a Zerapin that she was trying to, because she breached a wall. And instead of being a singularity of awareness, she was everywhere in the universe simultaneously. And that scared the daylight out of her. She thought she was dying. And she called me basically to say goodbye to me. And in the process of what she was saying, I said, I think you're just all the hard work you've been doing for all these years. This is the reward. This is the first level of ascendant. This is the power increase. But I know you're feeling fear over it. You're feeling vulnerable. And that fear and that vulnerability is being triggered definitely by the Archon. The Archons are big in this. And this is actually your experience of the dweller in the threshold, which is the test that we always get when we begin to shift awareness from one plateau into a next level. So however that shows up for you, you have to begin to understand the dynamics that this is creating. So why is the vulnerability a superpower? Let's get into it. Every time you're in a space where you're feeling, I am insecure about this, I think I'm about, like you're on top of a hill and you're feeling, if I look down too deeply, I think I'm going to fall, I'm afraid. Every time you're in that space, you have literally connected to your authentic self. All authenticity is a vulnerable, fragile, breakable, and extinguishable point in our core. And when you get to it, the fact that you're looking at it, even to you, is sacrilege. And it takes a little bit of insight and courage. Courage is the word. To expose and yield into that vulnerability and realize the territory that I am in, where I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm not gonna die. Because guess what? The reaction, the emotional reaction that I'm having now, like I have a pride of lion after me and I feel I'm gonna die. That reaction is an overreaction to the actual situation that the student was describing. She's in a bed, she's not in the savannah. It's an overreaction. And when you're in that space where your feelings is making it bigger, it's actually telling you that you have touched upon something inside of you. That authentic core, that part of us that is truly who we are. When we look at it, because to a child that's growing up, that vulnerability, that part of you that you feel is so precious, that's uniquely you, we bury it because the world is not prepared for our uniqueness. It's not prepared to see us for who we really are. It's not prepared to accept us. In fact, the way we perceive the world, everybody is trying to make me a cookie cutter of everyone else because I have to be the perfect daughter, the perfect son, the perfect student, the perfect husband, wife, brother, sister, the perfect worker, the perfect everything. And I cannot be who I really am. And therefore, that part of me, since no one will accept it, and I want to be accepted, I want to be loved, I don't want to be ridiculed, I don't want to be the freak, I'm gonna bury it. Every time we feel vulnerable, it's because that part of us where the true treasure that we are is buried. Every time we feel vulnerable, it's because that part is about to be exposed. Because, you know, in the normal 3D world, in the case of the student, she wants control. She wants a grip on the way she perceives reality. And as she was elevating and moving into a higher state of awareness, she lost control. And this went on for almost 2 months. And she was suffering. And she did talk to me a couple of times, but this time around, it was like literally goodbye. You know, she couldn't be silent anymore. And as I walk her through facing her vulnerability, you're not in the savannah, you're not dying. I'm so convinced that the student was so convinced, went to the doctor to have checks done. Everything is normal. You're not dying. But the feeling, again, the peptide going in, changing the cellular structure, making you feel inside this bubble. The feeling was that I am dying because I've lost control over all my perception, all my interests and everything else. I am dying. So it's important for us to understand the difference, right? That when you have that higher intelligence, when you have that awareness and you begin to perceive and say, okay, so I'm feeling vulnerable right now. That vulnerability, by the way, if you can yield into it and say, this is a treasure. I know it's scaring me, but I'm going to have to develop the courage where the whole universe is evolving to a theme of courage. I have to walk toward it very slowly and very gradually, and I have to go into it and realize I'm not in the savannah. This is where you rationalize in your head. I'm feeling great fear. I feel all of this, but this is not what it is in reality. I'm going to go into it. As I go into it and I go deeper and deeper, you might realize, as the student begin to realize now, that this vulnerability is actually filled with blessings, grace, and gifts. It is an expansion into her true nature. It is an expansion into you being a universal being, as opposed to being a singular focus point of consciousness. Now, granted, it's a giant leap, and the adjustment may be, a few days, a few weeks, a few months behind. But still, you have to grow into this, into the acceptance of this. But the awareness is now there that this is not death. It could be death, because if you desire it deep enough, death will find you. If you want to die, you're going to create a manner in which for death to come to you. So if you are trying to emancipate, to grow and to evolve into something else, you're going to begin to shift. It will begin to become something else. It will begin to morph into something else. And then you will begin to see that whatever you were feeling, that vulnerability, that trigger, that fear, was your greatest teacher. Any questions or any comments?
Well, Pierre,
Yes.
Esther, when you were talking about, the dying, I see that it's not a physical dying, but it's letting go of patterns, of being, patterns of feeling, patterns of identifying who you are and all of that. So it's a birth, it's a death and a birth, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And the greatest fear, the fear that everyone is having right now, and this is what's creating the fear of the insecurity in the future. We are all trying to survive. We're afraid of everything that's happening right now because we're all afraid of dying. And it's all dominoes. So you're afraid of the dying, of death, and that death, because you're afraid of death, you will do whatever you have to do to survive. And in some instances, to deny it, to get yourself high and drugged, or do whatever it is, a camouflage mechanism. Or some people will yield into it to try to see it as a way for them to achieve transcendence. But if you find, yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, so we know what we know, and we're afraid of what we don't know.
Correct.
Of what?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
We want to keep the status quo. We don't want anything to change because we know how to manage the status quo. And what we want most of all, because the death is connected to survival, and the survival is connected. They're like a chain link things, a chain link. Death is connected, the fear of death is connected to survival. The survival is connected to control. We want to manage everything and we want to control it.
Okay.
And the greatest gift that this process gives you is that in the end, once you've exposed the vulnerability completely, this is what I was telling my students, what you need to do now is to take the sensation of you not being in control and being exposed and being afraid. Take all of it that you're not in charge of and give it to your God and your higher power. Let go. Surrender. And the moment you do this, transcendence and transmutation of that feeling will occur.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Anybody else? Without this work, you will not make it. You will not be able to make it. It's impossible. And it's personal, it's individual. It's not something you can read in a book. It's not an intellectual thing. It's a conversation between you and your own energy body. It's you finding the truth that exists in you. And what's my truth is not your truth, and so on and so forth, because we all have different triggers and different things, and because we are all at different level. I'm a unique manifestation of God, and so is everyone on the planet. My triggers and how I can find my way into transcendence will have to be personal and intimate only to me, as it would be with you.
I want to say something, Pierre.
Yes.
Please. If I look back when we started doing the dentium work and how we used to just breathe it out, let it come out through our head, and how we've been practicing the morphogenic listening, I find it much easier to do this process with morphogenic listening. Especially at times if the feeling, the emotions are strong and I feel kind of ungrounded, I get the shallow breathing where I don't feel like I'm breathing well from my, sometimes, you feel more grounded, and when you inhale, you feel like it's really moving up. And there've been videos recently that how the morphogenic field, it really exists, and science is finding that it has intelligence, and it's really just all around you, surrounding you. And I kind of surrendered to that awareness that the morphogenic, it's really surrounding me, and it's all around me, and I let it kind of surround me like a blanket almost, and at first it was just kind of showed up in my head, but now as I'm doing it, I find it also easier to let go that way. And that could be just me, because I find myself a lot ungrounded, and it's harder for me just to do it through the breath. When I in my mind, in my awareness, when I just connect with the morphogenic feeling and with the fact that it's all around me and it's intelligent, that made it, for some reason it may be making it much easier for me lately.
Beautiful.
So I just want to share that.
Thank you, Ursula. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. So if we are doing the work right, that's a synopsis. It's a very short synopsis of the work of emotional intelligence. You don't ignore emotion. You don't label feelings as good or bad. You do the work. You have the dialogue and the inner conversation. And then whatever is exposed as the false belief, and the vulnerability of it. You surrender the vulnerability. If it's too big for you, you can't figure out a way to reframe it. You give it to God and ask God for help. Okay? And you keep doing this feelings after feelings, sensation. What this does for you, by the way, and this is going to kind of segue us into the next piece, which is social intelligence. It also begins to show you and demonstrate to you how easy it is for everyone on the planet to be disempowered and to be in fear, and the agitation, the radicalization, and all of the things that are witnessing outside. Once you begin to discover the mess that exists in you, and all of the things, and it's not just a mess, it's also a vast opportunity. I want to rephrase that. It's a vast opportunity, because yes, there's a lot of stuff that are inspiring us, but at the same time, it's a huge opportunity, because each one of them will be able, if you can release it and reframe it, it will help you find transcendence and transmutation. And what it does, by the same token, is that it provides me with social intelligence. Because now when I look at other people, because once you recognize something in you, let's say you dealt with victimization, or you dealt with parental trauma, or you were abused as a child, the moment somebody else is in that space, you can see it. And when you see it, you're able to be socially intelligent enough without interfering with someone else's will and volition, because a lot of time people are going to whatever they're going through and they don't want to hear anything from you. Okay, they don't want support, they don't want to, they don't want to, and it's the law of non-interference. You're not allowed to commingle your energy grid, your insight, your knowledge, your technology with anyone else without first disclosure, consent, and approval. So when you see somebody struggling, sometime, I remember one of my students says to me something very recently. He was walking down the street. This is somebody, again, social intelligence. And he's walking down the street. And then he saw this young lady that was very pensive. And for whatever reason, he walked right up to her and said to her, "You're beautiful. God loves you." And the girl broke out in tears. She broke out in tears. And then said, "You really think so?" She started trembling. "You really think so? I just broke up with my boyfriend." He said, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry, you're fine. You're beautiful. God loves you." "You really think I'm lovable?" She broke down. Spirit, because of his social intelligence, guided him to know exactly what to say to her. She needed to hear this because she was in this undeservedness pit where she was feeling that she got rejected and she's garbage. That's social intelligence. To be able to sense somebody else's need. And sometimes it's not even a conversation. Sometimes it's a smile. Sometimes it's you just sitting next to somebody and nodding at them. And sometimes it's just saying, "Good morning. Beautiful day to you. May you be blessed." Something simple. What that student said to this young girl is something very simple. But to her, it was everything. God used him as a way to transmit a very specific message to her. That's social intelligence. It's the ability to sense other people's need because you've been there, because you have achieved healing from certain kind of trauma, and you are able to communicate to them the codes and the frequency of the healing that you have received. You're not going to do the work for them. Of course, she has a lot of work to do in her self-worth and all that and so on and so forth. But the seed is now planted that she has worth and value. And it is up to her to nourish it. It's not up to my student to be responsible to make sure that the seed grows, but the seed is there. It's been planted. And it's up to her to nourish it, to give it a fertilizer, to give it sun, to prune it, to do everything possible for it to burgeon, to grow, so that she can begin to see her own self-worth and her own self-value. Now, when I'm saying that you're socially intelligent, I don't mean by that that you're just an empath and you're just absorbing everything. Okay, because that's a different conversation. This is if someone who's socially intelligent is positively affecting the people around them, around her. You are somehow finding a way to radiate the generosity, the attraction, the goodness, and the blessing that you know within yourself. And it doesn't have to be over the top, because people, and again, as I said, my student says, after I said the conversation with her, I said, may you have a blessed day, and he walked away. That's all he needed to say.
Pierre, I have a question on this, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm just thinking, I had kind of similar situation. I said something to somebody. It was on a train platform, but I asked for permission first, and I just said to her, like, do you mind if I make a suggestion to you?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you mind if I answer that question? Because she phrased the question out loud.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just wondering if that would be helpful if he asked for permission first.
He must have felt energetically that he had permission.
He felt that, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because a lot of time the permission you don't have to keep asking it out loud. A lot of time you feel energetically the higher self of the person,
if you know,
is giving you permission. Yes.
Okay. Okay, good.
Again, law of non-interference. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Again, it literally is trial by fire. When you pass the crucible of transformation, that all of these strange event that the planet is going through is creating for all of us, and you're able to find some sort of medium where you feel you're on a steady path, you can share that light with others. You can begin to share with them the peace and the serenity that you know. And sometimes it's 1 or 2 sentences, and that's all it takes. Other times it's a longer and deeper conversation. Other times it's just you sitting down on a bench somewhere and let this energy broadcast from your being. But it is not you empathing their feeling and running away and feeling, oh my God, I'm so with negative energy. I am so filthy because this is disempowerment. And most of the time, the people who are empath or so-called empath are doing this when they're picking up everybody's energy and they're feeling overwhelmed. The true nature of the empath, and I've written about this, I've done classes about this already. We can repeat this in the future, but I've done so many classes about this already. What the empath is really doing is that they are secretly scanning other people to find good energy. They're like a psychic spy. If you can imagine for a second that you're walking down the street and you see a girl walking down the street and you lift their skirt and you try to touch them. This is what they're doing energetically to everyone around them, because they're trying to, of course, the person is going to turn around and slap you. So every person that they touch or they try to tactically analyze so that they can begin to judge, critically judge whether their energy is good or bad. There are people who are doing this compulsively, subconsciously and compulsively. And every time you do this, the person you do this to will turn around, because they have defense mechanism. They will try to attack you because it's a violation. What I'm saying about social intelligence is completely different. You're not trying to discover, change, alter, or judge anybody. You're not thinking that you're better than them and they have negative and there's none of that. It's coming from a place of deep compassion and a desire to really, if the person accepts it, share the clarity that you know. Now, again, it's not always accepted. Sometimes people say no. And if they say no, no is a complete sentence and you walk away. Again, what you're doing is that you're releasing. A lot of time when I sit in the park and I'm doing meditation, I'm releasing a broadcast. People don't have to accept the broadcast, because a lot of time people are tuned into a different station anyway. They're not going to hear me because they are in the bubble of their peptide release of fear and disempowerment. They're not going to hear me. And it's okay. I don't have an agenda. In other words, a lot of time the empath has an agenda of finding that good energy. I don't have an agenda. If you say no, it's okay. If you say yes, that's okay too. I'm just releasing to the world and to the universe the serenity that I know, the peace that I know. And as a socially intelligent person, your need showed up for me. And I have a conversation first with your higher self. Is this somebody that I can talk to? Is this a conversation that I can have with this person? So you can feel the need first. And then you're like, okay, can I have a conversation? Can I say something? And in your instance, Ursula, that was polite of you to ask, may I say something to you? May I share something with you? And if that is okay, then you say what you need to say. And that's the extent of it. The rest is up to them. The seed is planted. Walk away. You're not trying to convince them and have them an argument. This is why when I see all of the conspiracy theory and the QAnon and all of the various false narrative and all of this stuff that's going on, people living in parallel, it's not my business to solve any of this. I don't have an agenda. I don't have to change your mind. I know where I'm going. But every once in a while, if I sense that I have the permission because somebody seems to be confused and they're seeking clarity, I can share that clarity with them. I can demonstrate to them the light that I know. And when that happened, poof, you step into different shoes. You entered now into a path of service. But it's not a missionary type of service, so-called missionary, which is which is colonial service. It's not service, it's colonialism. It's you going in and trying to change people to make them a certain way, which is your way because it's the right way. It's a different kind of service. It's a service, it's a part of service where you try to empower the person to discover internally the process that you just went through. Because we already said that this is individual, this is unique, and you're trying to engage them to find that path. There's profound respect in this. There is deep love for the sovereignty of others. And there is great compassion. And the next part of the conversation, I'm again doing summaries, is spiritual intelligence. And this comes in when you begin to realize that we as, let's say, Pierre on Earth right now, I am part of a collective of 144 fragments that are scattered in probably some pieces on Earth, others in other dimensions, in other places, in other planets. And each one of these pieces, including me, originally existed in a higher virtue, in a higher emotion. And that higher virtue or higher emotion, although I may have a definition, for example, we just talked about compassion. I may have a definition of what compassion is. I may have a dictionary definition of what gratitude is, of what mercy is, of what peace is, of what, you name the emotion. But it is still a cognitive awareness. It's a frontal lobe thing. It's not a peptide release that creates a visceral experience for me. So I know it as a derivative. I don't know it as a visceral reality. So the emotional intelligence the spiritual intelligence comes in when I begin to engage and have conversation with the Christed, not the regular, because these aspects of me that are scattered everywhere could now be existing, could be struggling either at a higher level or lower level of consciousness than me right now. But since there's no time and space, those fragments at some point existed in a Christed state, in an elevated state, where they embody the visceral reality of that virtue completely, of that high emotion completely. So there is a very specific exercise called the monadic merger, where you actually connect with each one of these fragments. And you ask them to share with you, let's just say, the peace that they know. Share with you the compassion that they know, the mercy that they know, the gratitude that they know. And as you do this on a daily basis, the higher virtue, just like circling Jericho, the higher virtues will begin to show up. The second sentence would be something to the effect, if I were at peace, if I had wisdom, if I were wise, what would I feel, know, and understand in me? You're asking them to upload energetically in you, to share with you energetically with you, the same way when I was talking about being socially intelligent, the peace and the serenity that I know, I'm sharing it, I'm broadcasting it. You're asking them to broadcast back to you the wisdom that they know, the gratitude that they know, the peace that they know, and to upload it viscerally in you so that you can be expanded and you can have a visceral experience rather than an intellectual, cognitive abstraction or derivative. And as you do this, very slowly, very gradually, the awareness is going to show up for you. At first, it's going to be something is there. I don't know exactly what it is. It will take several going around this exercise to actually begin to get a visceral awareness of what that emotion is. And when that visceral emotion shows up the first time, the way it shows up is as if you're having, let's say, an orgasm with gratitude. And your whole body begins to tremble and shake because the gratitude is with you, and your whole it's whole body experience. It is no longer a derivative. It is now a full body experience. Additionally, once you have that whole body experience, that feeling and that sensation is going to rock your soul so deeply and so profoundly that for the next few days, even a week, the bubble of that feeling and emotion will remain with you. And for the next few days, you have to keep going back to it to extract, because you're talking about experiencing gratitude from a Christed space, or mercy from a Christed space, or compassion from a Christed space. It has so many gifts inside of it, because it's not just one feeling that forms gratitude. Gratitude is composed of multiple petals, 12 petals to be exact. And as you sit in it for a week, these petals will show up and extract for you. And the benefit of this is that when you go back into your torsion field, when you go back in the street to be socially intelligent to people, to places, and while you're walking in the subway and you're talking to people, and you're sending them, let's say, compassion or mercy or love, you're not sending them a derivative. You're sending them a full body holographic experience. You're going to rock their soul. You're going to transform them. And you're going to change the frequency of your entire torsion field when you are in those spiritually intelligent moments.
Pierre?
Yes.
I have a question. The simplest way I can maybe ask, for the purpose of the morning class, do you know at this point if you're gonna have the high emotions as part of the curriculum?
We're going to get to it, but not right now.
Okay, because I'm just thinking, if in light what you're saying, if I should do it now, if I just wait.
No, we're going to get to it together. We're going to walk in lockstep.
It will be, right?
Yeah, we're going to walk in lockstep. We're doing something right now. Let's move through the essential seat of the rays. Let's move on to all of this, and then we'll get to it together.
That's what I thought. Thank you for confirmation.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments? If you're doing all these three things, or you first start with emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and spiritual, you're going to get to a point where all of the chaos and insecurities about the future that are out there are going to completely align or going to serve as a catalyst for you to find transcendence, transmutation, and to find the path to the new earth. Of course, it didn't have to be this way if humanity, let's say 150 years ago, had made different choices. But because we made the choices that we made by following greed and not paying attention to our heart and all that, we are finding that the world now, the Gaia and the universe is trying to correct. And it's creating these external things as a way to accelerate us to the growth that we were supposed to be at this point before the transit. And these external things are the accelerant. Any questions, any comments? All right, let's take a 5-minute break. And then on the back end of this, we'll do a closing meditation. Take a very deep and slow breath. And as you inhale and exhale deeply and slowly, allow the universal life force that permeates everything to enter into your lungs. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let your soul and your awareness drop in the middle of your chest. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Realize that you can perceive 360 degrees. Keep breathing deeply through your heart and slowly. Become aware of any feelings sensations and emotions that may show up for you. Where are you feeling this? Is it in your body somewhere? Is it outside of you? What are you feeling? Is it one feeling? Or a combination? Of multiple feelings? What is the first feeling? The second feeling? Are there any other feelings? What's the root cause of this feeling? Is this the first time that I've ever felt this way? Whatever vulnerability, fears, and false belief that this is revealing to me, I release all of it. Into the blessed field. I'll let go. It is not my responsibility to do, fix, or repair anything. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender to the great emptiness. And endless luminosity. I release all attachment, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness. And endless luminosity. I let go of all of my fears, my burdens, my triggers, and my mirrors. It is not my responsibility to do, fix, or repair anything. I release all control into infinity times infinity. And let the vast and infinite quantum field of conscious awareness guide my path and provide me with the healing, the miraculous and instantaneous repairs, the peace, the serenity, and the ascendance that I need. May the peace, the serenity, and the unconditional love that I know pass on to everyone. In my circle of influence. Hosanna into the highest. Hosanna into the highest. Hosanna into the highest. Take a very deep and slow breath. And whenever you are ready, open your eyes. How you all feeling?
Thank you, Pierre.
You're welcome, Janice. I want to thank all of you for listening to me. I hope this class, I know for some of you it's a review, but I think I may have gone too in depth in some places. But again, I think it's the frequency that was coming in. I channeled the whole thing. So thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you to my Patreon subscribers. Like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you share it. And I will continue and write me a comments below to let me know what topic you're interested in so that I can cover it in future videos. Thank you so much for co-creating this. Deep love to everyone. Good night.
Night, love you all.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
Right.